This is a very old story. There was a great kingdom ruled by a just king. The king was always surrounded by advisors and courtiers. These people would give advice day and night, speak great words. But when the real moment came, no one was of any use. There was always an ache in the king's heart that he had everything but not a single true and loyal companion. One day the king went to the forest for hunting with his courtiers. On the way back, a strange sight stopped his eyes. A young man was sitting under a dense tree, talking to himself in a loud voice. The courtiers immediately started laughing and said among themselves that this man is completely mad. But the king looked at the young man carefully and felt that there was something different in his eyes, a strange kind of spark. The king went closer and asked, "Brother, what are you doing sitting here alone?" The young man answered without a care, "I am thinking about clearing this entire forest and building my own city here, and becoming the king of that city myself." Hearing this, the courtiers burst into laughter, but the king stayed silent. He saw something in the young man and invited him to come along to the palace. On the way back, suddenly the young man turned his horse in the other direction and tried to run away. The courtiers chased him and brought him back. When they all arrived at the palace, the scene there left everyone stunned. There was a crowd of people outside the palace, and everyone was cheering with joy. The king asked what the celebration was about, and the people told him, "Your Majesty, on the road from which you went for hunting, the enemy's heavy army was waiting for you with full preparation. But you came from a different road, so you were saved." Hearing this, the king looked at the young man and understood that he had turned the horse deliberately. He had known everything in advance. The king announced right then that this young man would sit beside him in the court from today. The courtiers had smiles on their faces, but they were burning from the inside. Whispers began among them that this outsider whom nobody knows has been seated right beside us. He must be removed. They thought of a plan. They went to the young man and said sweetly, "Brother, it is the tradition of our court that when the king sits on the throne, someone should take off his crown and place it on the ground. The king becomes very happy with this and gives great rewards." The young man was simple and straightforward. He agreed immediately. The next day, when the king sat on the throne, the young man stepped forward, took the crown off the king's head, and threw it to the ground. The moment the crown hit the floor, a thick poisonous scorpion crawled out from underneath it where it had been hiding. The entire court fell silent. The king embraced the young man and said, "If you had not been here today, I could not have survived." The courtiers stood there watching because their own plan had saved the king's life. The king rewarded the young man, and his honor grew even more. The courtiers did not give up. They called the young man again and said, "Brother, tomorrow in court when the king is about to sit on his chair, pull the chair from behind. This is an old custom of the court, and the king becomes very generous toward you because of it." The young man agreed again without thinking. The next day, as soon as the king was about to sit, the young man pulled the chair from behind. The king caught his balance and saved himself from falling. But when the chair flipped over, everyone saw that one of its legs had already been broken from the inside. If the king had sat down, the chair would have broken, and the king would have been seriously injured. The king praised the young man once again and appointed him as the commander of the entire army. Now the patience of the courtiers ran out completely. They secretly made contact with the king of a neighboring kingdom and said, "Attack us! We will support you from the inside. You just have to finish off this young commander, and we will handle everything else." The neighboring king agreed and war began. The young man took his army into the battlefield. Reaching the border, he stopped his army, stepped forward in front of the enemy, and challenged. "First it will be just me and your king face to face." Both came to the middle of the battlefield. Suddenly a fierce lion emerged from the bushes and attacked the enemy king. The young men had no personal enmity with this king. He did not think for even a moment and charged at the lion. After a long fight, he struck the lion down and carried the wounded king to safety. Seeing this, the eyes of the enemy king filled up. He gave his army the order to stop the war. Then he said, "A person who saves my life despite being my enemy is not an enemy. He is an example of humanity. We make peace." Two kingdoms that had been enemies for years became friends in a single day. When the courtiers returned, they saw that the young man's status had grown even further, and the king had given him his daughter's hand in marriage. They said among themselves that every time we tried to bring him down, he rose even higher. How is this possible? Then one of the older and more experienced advisors among them spoke up. He said, "Friends, there is still time. What we did was wrong. We became so blind in jealousy that we tried to harm our own king. Remember, whoever God wants to elevate, the entire world together cannot bring him down. The traps we set kept tangling around our own feet every single time. If we still do not understand, our own end will be terrible." Hearing this, all the courtiers admitted their mistakes and asked the young man for forgiveness. The young man forgave everyone without any bitterness, because there was no grudge in his heart toward anyone. Friends, the lesson of this story is simple but very deep. In life, we often become restless seeing the success of others. We start thinking, "Why did this person get ahead of me? How did he come to my level? This was my right." But friends, jealousy is a fire that first burns the very person who keeps it in his heart. The person who works hard, keeps his intentions clean, and trusts in God, God gives him what no one can take away. So instead of burning at someone else's progress, increase your own efforts. Instead of trying to bring others down, focus on lifting yourself up. Because the one who walks with trust in God cannot be stopped by any plan in this world. Friends, if this story touched your heart and made you stop and think, then please like this video and share it with those friends who need this lesson. Tell us in the comments whether something like this has ever happened in your life, where people underestimated you but God stood by you. Subscribe to our channel right now for more such meaningful stories, and do not forget to press the bell icon. God willing, we will meet again in the next video.